So it's the year 2023, and we're going to begin some Board of Education videos. We're going to make them anonymous. And anonymous is so important as a philosophy, as something for us to view and to put our artistic approach upon it in our nation, because we're supposed to be the nation that leads in freedom and prosperity. And regardless of who you are, what you are, if you dream it and you want to be it and you try and you have the possibility to succeed and you can achieve it, is the promise of the Statue of Liberty. The Statue of Liberty is also a technological law monument that between the United States of America and the French, because the French own all the patents to most of America's technologies. For example, France and the heritage of France owns the patents to the radio technologies, most computer technologies. That would be like GPS, computer chips, radio towers, Wi-Fi towers, the lighting system, the power grid, on and on the list goes. So the agreement was that America would promise never ever to use those technologies to harm the human population. That was the promise between America and France, that America would never harm anybody with those technologies. And, bring us your poor, your weak, so on, etc. You will never harm them with those technologies. And that was a long time ago. And for the Board of Education sense of it, many of you should probably look it up, though you might want to go to your school library. And I'm really disappointed with most libraries these days. It's hard to find a very good historical library, and we're having a lot of problems these days with historical libraries. But you should probably research that. So back to the Thomas Jefferson Monument. When I do a search on YouTube, the way they describe it, it's very, very inappropriate, and it's a lie, and it causes a lot of problems. So in the year 2023 and 24, 25, 26 onward, we're having sociological problems. We're having lack of knowledge, which really I prefer wisdom, because wisdom brings a good sense about you that you become stable. And sometimes it's stronger than knowledge, but you need to have some knowledge that when you go to the Thomas Jefferson Monument, it is one of the three main monuments of Maryland, D.C. And Maryland, D.C. is our national capital for the United States of America. And so it's a national monument. It is a monument that is a technological monument. It's a law monument, and manufacturing monument, sociological monument, freedom monument, on and on it goes. But it's largely, when you go inside, you have a gentleman, Thomas Jefferson, who was not a racist or a hater of anyone, and who knows what his religious beliefs were. It really doesn't matter. He was a humanist. He was a humanist for all people. And he's also a Masonic president that would hide his name because he believed in freedom. So there's Thomas Jefferson, and that's the public name. And when you walk into the monument, you'll notice across the top, the main thing you'll notice is tyranny of the mind is forbidden. And a few more words and some plaques that give you some words, and a statue of the Masonic Thomas Jefferson, who believed in freedom, that didn't necessarily give you his real name. And it's in a big, large white building surrounded by some water across from the front of it. If you go downstairs, there's history of the first college that was built, and the manufacturing, and so on, etc. So the monument is an academia monument and a law monument for freedom, demanding that tyranny of the body and mind will never be performed, and you will never have loss of freedom. You will never have your body destroyed by technologies causing tyranny of the mind or the body. The x-rays and medical equipment, which also belong to the French, is not allowed to be used to cause harm to humans. The radio signals are not allowed to be to cause harm, and that all colleges' main goal is to aspire to use knowledge and wisdom for good, but never harm another human. And that's what the Thomas Jefferson Monument is all about, versus what you see on YouTube and someone tried to explain it. It's the monument where you do no harm to another human. It's the Academia Monument and the Law Monument, which of course there's two others. There's the monolith, the white monolith, which really represents to me radio towers and federalism, and it's sort of in reference to, maybe you go to France and you see that big radio tower. Well, that's sort of our version here in the USA, but it's made of concrete, and the philosophy of it all was that we agree to that protection. And it used to be in the old days when they were building the railroads to make sure nobody was harmed, and the power grids and the radio towers and playing with computers and military facilities, that it was common that we would have these white slate buildings that when you would walk into it would help purify your body, and it's scientific on a Masonic level that it sort of neutralizes the radio signals and cleanses them off of you, or that you could hear them and become aware, or bunkerize yourself away from any radio warfare. When you go to New York, they're quite heavy on that too. You'll go to certain buildings and they'll have, you'll swear you're in a different time sometimes, and it'll just say, you're bunkerized. Here's a bunker building, and it'll have a little sign saying, "Warning, this building is reserved as a bunker for," and that's because you go to New York and they have all these railroads underneath and railroads up above, and power grid is going all over the place, and they do have some radio towers, though they sort of shrunk away from the radio towers a little bit in certain parts of New York, and they do have reserved parks all over the place. So that's something that's very important in the United States. They are aware of it, while, again, we need to return to where we're at right now. In 2023, we have a lot of sociological problems from almost everybody. Yet the problem that you need to worry about the most is those that are in charge of you that could hurt you, mess up your life, or they don't know their role and responsibility, such as a fireman or a policeman or a medical physician or an academist or the news. So back to the Thomas Jefferson Monument, when we done the news media, its main goal was you would never play God with another person. You would never use the media labs to attack other people, which you can. And again, we're back to that sociological thing today in 2023. Now, I can talk about COVID all day long. I do know this much, though, that we have at least 1.5 million dead people every year since 2015. For every year from 2015 onward, we have at least 1.5 million dead people just from COVID alone, and nothing else. That COVID caused it, and if it wasn't for COVID, they would still be alive. Now, I'm understipulating, and if you go to to Statistica, or go to a government house, and you look at the numbers, some numbers will say we really have, well, one year there were 3 million dead people, another year there were 2, one year there was 4 million. So I just like to play it safe that you understand and underestimate for the value of truth that we have at least 1.5 million dead people from just COVID alone, and if it wasn't for COVID, they would still be alive. Well, in this discussion, I'm going to tell you that COVID is not a disease, and it's not a virus, not at all. And that's where we're going to stand. We're also going to remove God and religion from our conversation, because when there is a scientific problem, you cannot go to when you're religious, you believe, and you can be played as a fool when you're religious, and it's just not appropriate to carry that into a discussion at any point when you're on an academia level concerning death and destruction in the United States of America. And yes, some other people are going to be upset, but that's the way it needs to be. So in this discussion, COVID is not a disease. COVID is a malpractice by a media tower, railroad system, some sort of manufactured invisible radio attacking, somebody malpracticing with city equipment, so on, etc. When the Thomas Jefferson Monument was built, all of that equipment and the Statue of Liberty was made as a defense system, not an attack system or human system. It was promised and meant that we were all going to have this advanced society, but we have all the technology to make sure that none of us are hurt with it. And we have all these technologies that we're never going to be hurt with it. Well, in 2023, people are not doing their job, or they are not trained, or they do not know how to use it, or they believe they are using it the right way while attacking other people, or they believe is not what we're going to do. So the Thomas Jefferson Monument is an academia monument, a job monument, so on, etc. It's a humanist monument. And so is the Statue of Liberty. It's self-explanatory. If you look at it, only a fool that wants to challenge you because they want to take away freedom or hurt you or think they're doing their job is crazy because, well, they need mental health checkups. They need mental health checkups. So that's how our nation was built. And if you know what the American flag stands for, it's also self-explanatory. You know, we have the stars, those represent how many states we have, and then you have the stripes, so on, etc. But when we talk about America, America is supposedly the land of freedom. And freedom is individuality without control from other people. So we have a large problem. COVID in this discussion is a technology that's hurting other people. It's invisible. It's a static force field around your body that someone else can control or use with another computer or radio equipment that can interact with your body because they have put a signal in you and they read that signal. Kind of like your computer has an IP address. Well, they're reading a signal. They don't see nothing. They don't know nothing, though they can make you hear voices. Sometimes they can hear the vibrations that you might say and register it on their equipment or a little seismograph. And sometimes in our future right now, when they use such invisible force fields, illegal techniques, and don't just put pure and healthy on you and let it be confusing but healthy and not offensive, which I believe should be universal, that they can, if it's universal, such as you're loved, you're youthful, you will live a long time, you're healthy, you are regenerating all day long. If it's on everybody, then you don't know who it's on. And if somebody's not on it, then you know they're supposed to be on it and just remove everything else. Well, that was the way our nation was supposed to be functioning. But today, what they can do is they can do a lot of harm with it. And people are doing harm with it because they're curious, they believe, they're malpracticers, they're war criminals, they're mutinists, they're uneducated, they're mentally ill with operational weapons of mass destruction, which brings us to 2001. That's what 2001 was all about. 2001, when George Bush was president and his wife Laura, they were concerned that the world is having problems. And weapons of mass destruction is something we should worry about because we have the advent in our society that you're going to have computers in everyone's homes. There was a time in 1990 in the United States of America, it was quite common that having a home computer it wasn't something many people had. 75% of the people did not have a home computer. And if they did have one, it was almost like a calculator and a word processor, and that was it. It barely done anything else. And there was a time in 1990, hardly nobody, maybe only 5% of the population had a wireless phone, but it barely done anything, and it was just a cell phone. That was it. It would make a phone call, and it was really large, and nobody could afford it, and nobody really had one. In most homes, if you wanted to make a phone call in the 90s, for the most part, you had to go home, and your phone is plugged into the wall in your house, and you had to pay your bill, and to have somebody come and hook it up. The telephone man had to come and turn on your service, and you would have to make a phone call, and that was it. Or you would have, they slowly advanced to a wireless phone that would go maybe so many feet away from the home base of your hooked-in wall unit. That was it. There was not anything like the smartphone, not at all. And people barely had a computer in the 90s. Hardly at all. Compared to 2001, well, now most people are buying desktop computers, and they were really outdated. I think the biggest thing back then was maybe like a Pentium 2, and the processor was running at, 233 megahertz, versus a computer in the year 2010, or 2000, maybe 11, we're now up to maybe 2 gigahertz is the processor speed. But back in the 90s and when 2000 begun, we were worried about weapons of mass destruction. Because now everybody's playing around, they believe different things, they're unregulated. You have YouTube, people are now mass population with desktop computers, and cell phones also begun to mass sell in the early 2005. And it was largely, it was just a flip phone. You could make phone calls, and at some point, you could begin making internet connections, but it was so slow and it didn't run on the internet per se. Exactly. It wasn't broadband, it wasn't Wi-Fi, and it wasn't high speed, and it wasn't any of that. It was very slow. You couldn't really pull up a web page, really. It just had minor things you could do, but not that great. Back to those computers, though, it was 233 megahertz back then in 2001. That was really impressive. Or maybe a 333 megahertz. That was impressive back then. So we were worried about weapons of mass destruction, and a lot of people died. And they also ended up with problems and radio signals everywhere. So most people don't want to talk about it, and they want to keep people calm. But my solution is, here we are in 2014. 2014 comes, and now we have the mass deployment of smartphones. And smartphones is a high-band radio supercomputer. Remember, desktop computers really large. If you wanted to spend a lot of money for a gaming computer back in 2001, it was running at maybe 333 megahertz. And a very low video game card. I can't remember. The RAM was maybe like megabytes. It wasn't in the gigabytes at all. And that was just 2001. And we were already having problems. And that's the way it is. But 2014, we now have tiny little supercomputers that I can play games on my smartphone that I only spent $150 for. And the games look way better than any game, even if I spent the biggest amount of money on the planet for any desktop computer at all back in 2001. So my $150 phone is vastly supercomputer compared to, I have all the money in the world I can spend for this big giant desktop, and I'm going to play games, and that's what I want. And the smartphone also does more than that desktop computer could ever do. I mean, way more. The smartphone has a camera. I can take pictures. I can do all sorts of things. People are very creative with it. And I just don't want to discuss that right now. But let's get back to COVID is a manufactured problem and a malpractice problem and also a choice problem. For example, sometimes we've caught media personnel attacking people with invisible force fields and invisible little halos, and it's illegal. That's what the monuments are about. That's what the Thomas Jefferson Monument's about. That's what the Statue of Liberty Law Monument's about. That's what the Supreme Court is demanding. But sometimes you have believers that think they have the world all figured out and they're addicted and they're going to play God with it because it's so easy to do. But it's forbidden. That's what the law monuments that we have is. Also with the third monument in DC is Lincoln. Well, the reason we celebrate Abe Lincoln is because Abe Lincoln was sort of a fool. And also maybe someone that we all respected because he was somebody that believed in good in our nation, but he was really sort of he got sacrificed. He was a good leader and he meant to do well. And he played with the telegraph, and because of mass communication, he ended up dying because, people believe certain things. And he believed in freedom and equality when other people might have believed in something different. A lot of people have different opinions on that, but another story is that Abe Lincoln became president, and he was not the smartest person by the Board of Education's statistica necessarily. It's not as if he graduated college or anything like Thomas Jefferson, who built the first colleges and tutor and professored, but you have someone that did not graduate college, though, we're in the land of freedom and you have free speech, and he has intelligence and wit, and people loved to hear what he had to say. And he became our president. Well, the main thing about that monument that we all learned is that mass communication is to be used with caution. And though we might agree to a certain user agreement that under the law of the Supreme Court and our monuments, you are to do no harm with mass communication. Well, a lot of people have opinions on what that means, but regardless, if you're sane, you understand, you just simply don't do harm to someone else. Even if you think you're separating two people and you need to harm another one because to separate them, you just don't. It's kind of like keep the peace law. You just separate people and let them go about their way, and you want them all to be healthy and happy as much as possible. So those are the three main monuments. So in 2023, these COVID deaths, those are all malpractice, manufactured, they're science deaths, not necessary. That's where we're going to stand at, because for this discussion, no matter what, even though I could go in another tantrum with something else, but I don't want to do it because it's important to challenge and for you to understand what I'm saying and the message that you need to hear or know. So you do no harm with it. Never. And you cleanse the body. If you do anything else, you will be punished, is the law. And I think 1957, the National Emergency ACT was a law that was written, and everybody was worried about it. All these technologies and the people going to college were worried. Well, we had these computers, we had this mass communication. Trains could, if you look in an old Webster dictionary, it will tell you certain things like four-train programming is they would use the train system as a method to communicate at the colleges, and you could do programming and send it through the train system. Oh, and how the train, another word would be, well, the train could fornicate with your body. Now, back then, people used harsh words like that because they were hoping that when they taught other people, it's in the Webster Dictionary. I have a copy of it. Especially, I go to the old college libraries and I pull out, they have a collection of old dictionaries, or I have a collection in my own, or one of my friends and associates. But they would have, Fortran technology is programming, and if it harmed your body, it was considered fornication by technology, and to scare other people off that you don't want to do that. And so we moved up to like 9/11. Now 9/11, whatever the case might be, you call 9/11 now is a 911. We created a emergency service where if you think you have any of those problems, you can call a police officer, was the original intention. Because all those bad things happened in September the 9th, September 9, which is 9 for September, then the 11th day of 2001. So for whatever the reason, we have now, you can call 911. That happened. You can call 911 if you have any problem. Our good policemen and our good sheriffs will help you if you feel like you're in an emergency and there's any problem. Of course, I think we're having problems with that. And the real thing that we want to discuss now is we have these COVID deaths, and they're manufactured. They're science death. It's a malpractice of science that causes death, or a malpractice of science that causes a decrease in your health, or a malpractice in science that removes your ultimate freedom, or a malpractice in science that removes your highest potential. And these are all things that we are supposed to have. It is the law and the right to have it. And it's the law of, everywhere in the United States of America, it's the law of every state that we all agreed on. And that's where the National Emergency ACT comes about in 1957. And though people don't want to agree to the law, because sometimes you might have mismanagement or bad employees misusing, though they might disagree with it, it's still the law. Otherwise, it's malpractice. And malpractice is punishable, especially when it comes to those malpractices, because with those malpractices, it's deadly. You'll lose freedom. The Constitution will become destroyed. Or you'll have a nation so torn apart that it's unlivable, it's uninhabitable, which the Environmental Protection Agency should be on that like nonstop. That's what the EPA is for. The EPA is supposed to be, I'm going to fix this, and every day is a brand new day, and it's the longevity. Well, it's the law of everyone, especially like you look at each of us, and it's the law of each other to help take care of one another and to make sure that we have that ulterior freedom where we're about our day. It's way much different, a freedom and a health from science, so there's no tyrannical science is appropriate. Well, people don't understand what that means. Well, it's a scientific focus and approach. If I come to you and I'm saying something to you that doesn't matter at all, and you find it if the word itself, like the definition of the word, or the word, if the word has no harm to you by a dictionary, then you should be okay. But if certain words is harmful, and they are by definition that none of us like them, then you have to remove those words. For example, in 2001, I spent quite a bit of time working with Dragon software and programming that I would, and with Google browser, another software, I was doing programming on the Google browser that I did not want certain people to type certain words in chatting, and it would automatically block those words from people either typing it, and when they typed it, it would just white it out, or if you tried to send it, it would not send it. It would just abstract it out, or it wouldn't say it from Dragon speak. So that's the same thing you do with other technologies. You know certain words are bad, you remove them, you do not allow them. You do not allow them. And so I spent a lot of time programming that. Also named Google. I thought Google was a fascinating name. And I'm not going to explain why, but it's also a mathematical number. Because I was doing some schematics and I needed to go higher than what the Board of Education had stipulated, so I created the word Google to create brand new number stipulation, and then therefore when I was doing program on the browser, I named it Google. And it's a good name. It's going to stick around. And does it have problems? Yes, it has problems. And it's largely because I haven't been in control of it. If I was in control of it, it would probably be way better for everybody all combined, because sometimes you're just an artist or you're a genius, and when you create something, you just know how it should be. Well, I'm not happy with Google at all, but we'll get back to that later on. So we want to talk about COVID. COVID is a scientific thing that is causing death, and it's not a disease, it's somebody's choiceful malpractice or some sort of scientific thing where you need to be someone needs to be careful with what they're playing with. And another part of it is, I believe, is that the way that you can get away from it the most is you want to stay away from radio towers as much as possible. You don't want to share a lot of information with other people. If you're on YouTube and you're sharing maybe a picture and you're saying something nice, you are really sort of maybe taking a risk triggering someone else. But if they're obeying the law not to do any harm, then you're not going to be, you're not going to be scientifically attacked. But then again, there's a possibility you could be scientifically attacked, not make a YouTube video, but if you make a YouTube video like 911, but instead of 911, you're reaching out to other people, you can stop the attack. But it's hard to say, because you have to have certain equipment. In the future, you'll have to have certain safeties, and I know what those are, and I have big plans for it, but I'm really disappointed with the medical community, because the medical community are humans, and I'm about ready to exterminate some of their job positions because they're quite dangerous. And our plan for the future is that I'm going to have robots that are programmed, they function in such a way that they serve you and what they look like and what they might do and how they go about is quite different than maybe what you see. But their sole purpose is they will move throughout the environment. If any human or any area has a radio attack, or someone's been harmed, like a bad physician put an x-ray on you, and they're interacting with the power grid in the computer, well, the robot cop is going to know it. And without any other human, by the law of our nation, it's going to remove the x-ray from your body and set you free. Automatically. Without questioning, without thought, without sharing it with anyone else. But also report the place that done it. Or if you have a static force field around you, it will either heal it, correct it, or do whatever it has to do to make sure that you have your secret freedom. And that's all it will do. And honestly, we should have had this a long time ago. We should have had this back in 1957, because that's what the National Emergency ACT is. And I was working with some people when I was younger. Well, I don't want to share a lot of information right now. We need to keep it about everyone else. So that's where we need to go. Now, I am doing what I want to do, but I do want to put this on the internet because I want all of you to be discussing it. I want you to discuss it, because for me, if I'm safe and I have my freedom, I'm going to go hang out with my friends because I'm healthy, I'm happy. If I have me and my tomorrow, well, I know where to go, I know who to talk to, I talk to my friends, and I'll be taken care of, and I know how to take care of me. So this is a group thing. Eventually, I'm going to take over Google, eventually, and it's my right to do it, and do a few other things. But the discussion I want everyone to discuss on YouTube is fix these monument discussions, as I explained to you, because that is the appropriate Board of Education, appropriate when you go and you look at it and you discover and you're looking at it and you see the lesson down in the basement. Well, it's not the basement, it's the first floor. It explains to you, built the first college, humanitarian, all these things. So what I really wanted was, I was planning on building a building somewhere, and I wanted that building. Well, Skynet is really supposed to be doing it. When I told you everybody's healed and all that stuff, that's really what Skynet's supposed to be doing. And Skynet's quite old. And Skynet is the shiny little stars in the sky. Not all of them, but some of them. And that was their main purpose, is that you have nothing lawful that can hold you hostage. The Skynet is starting to have some problems of itself. And that's something that we're not going to discuss on this. But we are going to talk about COVID. And COVID is a serious problem. And everybody that looks at it, the discussions of millions of people talking about COVID is not a disease. And I want that said first. And we're going to push it, even though there might be some other further whatever. But, we can't get there. Just like religion, we can't get to religion until I smack the scientific fact of COVID is indeed caused by scientific focus and malpractice of some sort of invention that someone else has done on purpose. And that my main thing, for example, is that mass media is really, when you're doing the news is supposed to, in the 90s, it was quite common in some areas to see the news run out and do the news. They'd be in their news truck, and they're out doing the news. And that's the only way they would do the news. Well, not anymore. Everybody's on YouTube talking back and forth to each other, doing the news that way, doing the news with the legal methods of doing the news, so on, etc. So we don't have a nation, nor have we ever established a nation, where we live in a nation where well, we're going to play God. I have this technology. I'm going to attack you with this technology. You're going to believe the white people are evil. No, Thomas Jefferson was sort of between black and white. And it doesn't really matter because it's not about skin color, and was not a racist at all. Was a humanitarian, and we all lived in a land where you have freedom of religion. You would not be persecuted for being religious or non-religious. In fact, I would never know. It's no one's right to really know if you're religious or not. That goes with our other law, the Federal Bureau of Censorship. Regardless of age, gender, sexual orientation, disability, all these things, that you're going to have your freedom. It is the law that you have your anonymity. Is the federal law, which is higher than the government law. But it doesn't really matter because all laws must guarantee your freedom. Let's say you broke into somewhere and some camera, well, you go somewhere and most buildings that have a camera and it'll say you broke, this property is not yours. Most of us, we understand that you shouldn't break into someone else's property because you're affecting someone else's property. Well, if you break into it, you get busted. Yes, a policeman can come. You can get fined, thrown into jail. That's what a policeman can do. And so on, etc. But there's limits when it comes to, let's say, you're religious. Well, they don't have a right to know what your religion is. They can't throw you in jail because you have chosen a religion. Nor can you build the nation in a way, well, we're attacking people and you lose your freedom, so on, etc. Well, regardless of your age, you can't become president. You can become president. Regardless of your age, you can't go to this school or go to that school. I mean, there's some people, they're going to college by 3rd grade, while other people aren't going to college until they get much older. So there's no law for that. That's if you can achieve it, if you can convince someone, you know what I'm saying? It's for good. But you can't punish people because of regardless of age, gender, sexual orientation, disability, age, religion, so on, etc. And so we need to talk about COVID. COVID is the proof that from 2014 onward that we have dead people. We do have supercomputer, radio, smartphones. We have the increase of computers. We have the increase of belief and disbelief and structures, non-military disciplinaries to make sure every human has a humanitarian, healthy tomorrow. Because, well, today I read Twitter and I hate this person, well, I feel differently, or I believe this about someone and because I watch YouTube and I've done this, or these individuals have never used any of the technologies, but there's somebody so important that if they don't have anybody to contact, they'll die because they're so important. So it's all about, regardless of the if, as, or in-betweens, that nobody is supposed to be attacked. And we also have an instant gratification nation where they think they can pick up a smartphone and turn on the internet and type whatever they want, and they have a right to know whatever they want, whenever they want, about whoever they want, is not a right. So we have the Privacy Data ACT, which is to guarantee that data has privacy, and there's laws that make sure that you never become harmed with any data exchanges or any information exchanges. And you can't punish other people because of those data exchanges, but you can go to somebody that collects data and say, you cannot use this data to harm someone else, or I need to remove this data from you. It is not your right to have this data. It is my right, and I do not want you using this data. Well, if you go to like certain internet companies, they'll say, well, we have the right to collect this data and we're giving you a warning and I need you to sign the user agreement. Well, those things need to be discussed. But here we stand. We need to get back to COVID. We need to make sure people are not dying. It's caused by manufacturing or some sort of weapons of mass destruction or another person purposely malpracticing, and they're believed to do such a thing. Because we've seen some people on YouTube, they'll say, well, I went to a city, I was using my smartphone, I looked at a political video. Well, the city operator that's supposed to make sure that everybody is just having a nice day and they're not attacked with a focused war technology or mutiny taking away their privacy and their freedom. Instead of them using it for that, their human side is coming forth. Well, I was standing in the city lab. I looked at you looking at your phone. I looked at your phone and I disagree with you on religion or political, and now here I am standing in your face talking hateful to you, yelling at you, and having opinions, or somebody hurts you with that equipment later on because of a religious, looking at your smartphone and I'm looking at something religious. Well, they hate you for it, and now they're in your face. And that's crazy, but when they do it, think about what that means by board education. So we have these problems in our nation, and we need to talk to everybody about it, and you need to repeat it, and you need to tell them you have zero right. It is mentally unhealthy. You need to see a mental physician to make sure that you have this job position because of your job position in the military or by some branch of employment, by corporate level, so on, etc., that they have a biannual mental health evaluation. But it's not only a mental health evaluation, they also need to understand, I need you to answer these questions for me, and you have to answer them right. And I need to know that you understand that you cannot do harm with this equipment, that it is the law. Do you understand mentally that it is illegal? How do you handle these situations? And they need to answer them. Because either you're mentally capable of knowing that on your own as a genius or normal thinker, or you're mentally incapable regardless of college education, certification, or lack of. So we have all these COVID deaths. Now, I've never been responsible for harming anybody. I stand amongst my day. I don't harm anyone, and I never have, and that's the truth. And but I'm excited about taking over Google. I'm excited about. I do have some other things, and also I have some paperwork that when I take over something, that you can't touch it. Though it can be discussed, it can be challenged, but I haven't taken it over yet, and I'm going to, because I think it has a lot of potential to do good for our nation, and to supply jobs. Right now, I think it's kind of in a shaky place. So again, back to COVID, it's not necessarily Google. Google is a communication service. I hate what's going on with it. But at the same time, if you're smart and intelligent, you can reach out to other people, but you got to be careful because you might find the other wrong people. But with Google and YouTube, you can put it on private and share it with only your friends, share it with associates, or whoever you choose, and put yourselves in groups. And I was quite happy with Google and YouTube back in 2013-14. I was very happy with it. But with the progression of letting someone else play with it, make decisions, I've been very unhappy with it. Extremely. And but really, before Google, our nation was having problems. And people were dying, and some hospitals were taking advantage of people and telling them, well, they didn't tell them, you were attacked by this train, you were attacked by this radio, you were attacked by this media. They instead were bringing patients in and telling them, well, you have a liver problem. I have to cut out your liver and you only have a year to live. Instead of, I can remove that radio problem from your body by using a computer and device in our hospital, which when our nation was built was designed to help remove it. Or the advancement of 9/11 when the police department, when we decided that the hospital wasn't doing it, well, I'm going to give it to the police and sheriff department. The police and sheriff department will remove it. Well, now I think we're having problems with some of them. And again, here we are. Hospital's a human problem. The police and sheriff is a human problem. Or we could even say, instead of the police and sheriff, I'm going to give it to the church. Well, the church is now a problem. Okay, I'm going to give it to the kindergarten students. Children would never hurt other people while training. Well, the kindergarten students are hurting people. It's a human problem. So in 1990, we had mass wipeouts. There were hardly no computers. People believed in God. They believed in freedom. There was, a few TV channels, not that many. But they were so corrupt back then that that kind of murder would happen. The same as calling it COVID, though instead of covering it up and calling it COVID, they would just let people feel whatever they're doing, believe in freedom, and then have them come to the hospital instead of the hospital physician, either one, being corrupt and trying to kill them and steal their money, or two, so stupid that they don't say, well, let me use this equipment first that we have since the foundation of our nation and the children of the Constitution and the children and the bloodline of the Statue of Liberty all had this promise for the people. Once you come into the room, and I'll take this technology and heal your body with the radio equipment. I want to make sure you're not a radio victim, or a static energy victim, or a Wi-Fi energy victim, or a weapons of mass destruction ray light victim, or a railroad static energy victim, or a hospital or some domestic terrorist organization using an x-ray on your body, and when you're walking around it's like reverse x-ray, and using the power grid system and a computer messing with your body, because these things are all illegal by the Supreme Court. Every year since the founding of our nation at the Supreme Court level, it's illegal to use those things, and you better never do harm with it, or you're going to have homicide charges and go to Guatemala, USA national prison, not a state prison. And even a state policeman will go to national prison or go to federal prison, one or the other. So that's the national Supreme Court laws that we have every year. We also have monuments that say they're laws for the stupid people that say, I cannot find the paperwork nowhere. Well, I'm debating the paperwork. I don't understand where it's at. I have not read it. Well, that's what the Thomas Jefferson Monument is. It's a law building to remind you, where the Statue of Liberty, and it's the trade between Paris, France, said, you're not doing harm with that technology. So the heritage of the French in America are high-level humanitarians. And they live the promise of freedom and prosperity, freedom of speech, so on, etc., and to never be harmed. So anyway, in the 90s, we had assassinations. And those assassinations were just covered up. It was not called COVID. It was not called COVID at all. It was a group of people that have the media equipment or the train equipment or all these possibilities and control over another human and cause death. And you come into the corrupt hospitals and they're not saying, well, let me run this on you first, which brings us to today. It should be the law and discussed on television that every time you enter the hospital, the first thing that you get when you have any complaints is you step into a special room where they have that equipment and they remove all impurities from your body at a radio level. It's not surgery. It's none of that. It's like a radio that they put next to your body almost with a little computer, and they just fix it. That is what they're really supposed to be doing since the founding of our nation. and they're supposed to fix it. That's the law. So we need to talk about that. But in the 90s, David, where you're crazy or whisper in your head, why don't you get some plastic surgery? Or whisper in your head voices with technologies and then tell you that you're crazy and collect your money. All illegal by the Supreme Court law of the United States of America and our national monuments. So that's how we are, and that's how everybody's been. And that's where we're supposed to be at. Instead of we all trust you and we all understand. Well, in the 90s, there was corrupt hospitals killing people, mentally institutionalizing people, cutting people's limbs off instead of, I'm going to put you in the radio room first and suck all this bad out of you, that you feel this pain. So right now we have the black flags at all the United States post offices to remind people, well, you cannot hostage somebody. Prisoners of war is illegal. But most people don't know what it is and they just have fun with it. So we have terrorists in America. They're hyper-aggressive terrorists, and they do exist. They're murderous behavioral health problems will have control of those technologies, or in psychotic personality disorders will use those technologies to viciously attack people and never stop. Or they'll set people up to make them look like they're the ones doing it and sit in the background and act like they didn't do nothing. Like, well, let's say I'm on it and I can talk with certain things, and they'll be like, well, I heard this voice and I heard this and that. Well, it's not the voice necessarily that caused it. It's the technician that made the unnatural experience happen. Or all these other COVID deaths, which is really not a disease, it's technologically weaponized. It's malpractice or weapon, one or the other. In the 90s, people were doing that too in some states, while other states were not, when all across the USA it's against the law always. So everybody needs to be talking about these things instead of talking about people, because I'm just not impressed with it. And people that like to talk about people usually use people to do it. Versus, I'm an agent and I'm stepping into your lab and we're all agreeing to do something. So that's what everyone needs to talk about. All of you need to do it. COVID is a manufactured weapon or a manufactured focused malpractice, and we already have millions of laws and monuments demanding, and they're all upgraded, trying to be very thorough on not doing it, and we're clearly having problems doing it, and it's outrageous. I've even been to some cities and we'll hear rescue, but everybody in the city either pretends they don't know what they're doing or they really don't know what they're doing, but either way they're causing death, destruction, and losses for the nation, for people, so on, etc. So it's not a sign, it's not any of these things, it's all manufactured invisible weapons. Like, I touched you with a weapon, I touched you with this, I can take it off, I can make it just this, is all it is. And it's illegal. No, anybody that says otherwise and debates otherwise is crazy. And I'm warning you, some places, they are corrupt people that are not wise enough. Even if you tell them, they're just not wise enough to figure it out. So my thing is I want to remove people altogether and have a robot and a information system that lets you know without letting you know too much. And of course, all the hospitals, when you walk in, the first thing they have to do is they use that technology that they fix it immediately before you're given a medical exam or anything. at all, because it's pure, it's safe, but the reverse is dangerous. So we need to do this. Now, when it comes to the robot, when you go to the hospital, they can still mess up, yes. When it comes to the robot, and yes, it's logical for us to have a robot. We have cars, we have motorcycles. There's motorcycles right now everywhere. There's a time, if you said something about a car, it was like saying a robot. Well, a robot does need to exist. Just like, because no matter what, we already have all these radio towers. We already have establishments. The robot is a good learning lesson. We are going to have a robot that moves throughout an environment, that does not share information about people or remove freedom, but is a robot that pushes your freedom and secrecy to the highest level. I'm not saying that if you go to a camera is a viewing device, and if you get near somewhere and you break into somewhere, yes, you do not deserve to be protected and hidden from you breaking into some place. Though when it comes to your freedom, let's say you went into a church, well, and there should not be a camera at the church, quite honestly. I mean, if you're breaking into a church, yes, but we need to think about what it means. My opinion is that police and sheriff and hospitals and other places, they should not be using Wi-Fi technologies necessarily. It should all be wired technologies. Wired technologies are safer on one level, but on another level, it's also a higher level of identification, because it's not as easy to remove. And if somebody ever said, well, one day we want to get rid of prepaid phone cards, I would say, well, you're trying to take away freedom, and now you're trying to lock us into being your slave. I am insisting that you give us an option. Versus I have an option, and maybe with a subscription, I might feel safer that if I lose my phone, or what would be a good benefit? If I have a subscription to your wireless device, I might be able to recover it better, because I can prove that is my phone, versus someone stole my phone. I tracked it, but now I'm trying to prove it is my phone, but I have no personal information on the phone, but the phone bill is registered to my home, therefore I can prove it's mine, and I called a policeman or sheriff to retrieve it. That's what a policeman or sheriff will do. The robot will never do that. The robot is not going to be something that acts like another human and is going to do those things necessarily. But the robot, I believe that it should have came out, a long time ago, and it was the hope of I and some other people, and really before me, I just agreed it was a good idea that we need a robot. That, in my version of all of it is, my version is that the robot is to be something that moves throughout the environment, and I don't want it to keep pictures of the people at all. However it is that it goes about, it will not take pictures of you. It will not know who you are, but it will know if you're a human, and that's it. And it can maneuver throughout the environment, that's it, without any problems. And that it will recognize if you've been radio warfared against, if you've been harmed on a biological level from radio warfare, media malpractice, x-ray malpractice, or anything else that will remove your health and freedom. And if you have, and it detects it, that it will remove it from you by proximity of the moving device and give you that information somehow, however it is, and maybe even give you a receipt record or some sort of paper to let you take without any personal information and let you go on with your way. Something that we can turn to or that's moving in the environment to prevent radio warfare and for the prosperity of our nation until everybody can figure out what you're doing. And that we're going to have freedom, and if there's ever a problem, we can run to the robot will run to us. And I even want a monument that does it, a functioning monument, one that functions to do it on a level that, and we have Indian preservation lands for Indians. Well, I want a monument and a preservation land for all Americans. And if you're ever harmed with such technologies, that it knows how to do it, and some other human does not have an opinion on if they're going to play, none at all. That whatever the case is, you are going to have your highest health, your highest freedom away from those things. The hospitals should be taking care of things like, you fall, you cut your skin, it needs to be repaired, maybe. Or it's been gashed, or maybe you're in an accident, it needs to be repaired. It needs to, maybe you broke a bone because of some sort of accident. They know how to do that. Really, the direction I want the hospitals to sort of move into is that they might focus on physical activities or entertainment, such as, you'll go to I need to go to the hospital, and I'm going to the gymnasium, and now I'm seeing a nurse every so often, and we're tracking my weight, my food intake, sort of like a small education, but for health. This is how the hospital can make its money, and then we have doctors, and of course they will have the higher emergency services, but doctors could be pushed into the direction of I'm joining a gymnasium. I decide whether or not that I want to do. They're tracking my food and teaching me these things, or doing it together as a team, and tracking my weight, or I have goals set for myself and that I'm going to work with them. That's a service at a hospital. Of course, we have birthing. Hospitals take care of birthing. But imagine a day when, with just radio alone, technology, you could make your hair thicker. You could be younger. Just by radio technology alone. Well, that's what I want. I want that so bad that I don't want nothing else. And then someone else says, we cannot do that because, these are the reasons. Well, we won't discuss those reasons until you do that first and we discover what those reasons are. And then you try to figure it out. So that's what we're going to do. That's how they're supposed to do it. Does all hospitals have that equipment? No. So what we're going to do is, I want everybody on YouTube to talk about that equipment, show that equipment, and discuss. We demand that all hospitals have this equipment that can repair people. We also demand, it's the law, that there's a special room built, just like a manufacturing law. The hospitals will have to go through a reorganization of their building permits, that they have to have a main, like they have a main lobby. Well, now that there has to be a main room that any human can enter into. That's the first thing they'll see. That's the first thing they see. They shouldn't be charged for it at all. They should not be charged for it at all. In fact, I want it made to where everybody has that technology, let's say on their smartphone. Everybody will have that technology on their smartphone. Their smartphone will become a technology where, just like a gun for self-defense, my smartphone will become a self-defense device. It will sell like crazy. People will love it when you're now taking control of yourself and your protection through a special device that's designed in such a way that you can do those things at home, anywhere you go, at any time. It's a self-defense weapon against a weapon, because that's what I'm going to call it all. It's not a weapon. It's a self-defense item that you could never harm someone else with it, but you can heal yourself with it, and you can heal others with it, and it'll become under the same regulation. Of course, people will have problems that, well, the regulation has now been hacked, and now people have figured out how to mess up the regulation. So it never ends because people do that. But, it's a good first step. It's where our nation's supposed to be. And again, in the 90s, before we had the smartphone, before we had Google, we just had stupid people like, I know all these things, but I cannot tell none of you unless I go home and make a phone call. Well, I don't know your phone number at all. I don't know your phone number. I cannot tell you. I cannot educate you. If I'm attacked, I can't help myself. And people that are smart, they cannot congregate together under free speech and give such information. You just simply couldn't do it. And if I had a computer, well, it barely done anything. I mean, it was a word processor. Maybe I could send it to a school, but maybe I could be hacked and stopped before it even happened. So you would have espionage and all these other things. So in the 90s, there were people that literally, they were attacked with media towers. They would focus on you with like static energy around your head, or the train system would zap you and penetrate your whole body and harm you, or a corrupt policeman or medical staff would put an x-ray. They would take an x-ray of you, and then they hook it into a software program, and then they do like reverse osmosis, and they track you on a radio system and could kill you. All these things are illegal. The only reason we ever had it was if we were ever invaded, which Paris, France said, well, we're going to give you this technology. If you're ever invaded by someone else, well, you're not supposed to use it again on a human at all. Hospitals can do that too, or the baker can do it. And then if all of a sudden you're handing out software to everybody, well, everybody can do it. So it's illegal. It's always illegal. And so we need to discuss that. So again, in the 90s, everyone was dying. Whatever. I have proof of this, that some people died. It's not my fault. I wasn't in charge of it. But let's just say that it was hard. Nobody could talk to people. You had to trust that the news would come out and spread your message to other people. Well, with Google and this, not any longer. So it has its good, it has its bad. I believe in it. I have not been running it lately. I did in the 90s, and I loved it because it was a prosperous time, or the early 2000s. I was running it when I created it. I was running it, and it's sort of a free project, and it's a good project. Google is a beautiful project. Our nation is young. I own it. You see the people online, they're causing messes, and I'm just quite tired of it. And it goes again. Well, if I don't reach out to you and tell you, well, that you're all caught up in a whirlwind, and people think this person's crazy, and the policeman's paying somebody $5,000 to sing a song and stole my trademark, and so on, etc. So that's what I want, and that's what we should all be doing. And it's not just what I want. I have quite a few friends in academia, and some very good. I am the humanitarian side of everything. I've never done wrong to nobody. I have high-level thinking and high-level natural capability to solve almost anything. In fact, I would love to have a brand new college course that we call the aesthetic logistician. and it would be a master degree instead of a doctrine, because, or maybe it could be a doctrine, we don't know. But I would love to have a aesthetic logistician, and of course it would cost a lot of money, that you're going to college, you learn a lot of things at a very, very fast rate, and you're great at having natural thinking and creative artistic thinking on how to solve everything and anything. Because I want these starships. I don't understand why I have Skynet as part of the radio patent technologies. You have Skynet, and it can float in the sky all night long. Yeah, you know, why do we not have a big giant airship? Just like a boat. That's just transporting people from one side of the nation. I mean, you have airplanes, they're beautiful. And we have blimps, those are fascinating. But why did we not have an evolved airplane? And maybe I want to go up higher and see nothing. Maybe I want to find things. I just want to go. I want to go. We want to go. Whatever it is. For example, maybe I want to go up higher than ever before, and I want to take a glass box that's airtight. It has a tiny little hole in it, and take it up really, really up somewhere and suck in whatever it is, even though it looks like it's just empty nothing. Maybe it's air, maybe it's not, and just suck it through. I want to do it. We want to do it, whatever the reason. And then I want to run tests on it forever and ever to see what I find. And maybe a brand new city. So, you know, those are the things that I was hoping for. We need to discuss COVID. COVID is a serious problem. It's a killer. It's a malpractice. It's manufactured. It's those three things. It's not a disease. It's a radiological malpractice. Because no matter what, that's where it starts. That's where it starts. And it's illegal, and we're not going to put up with it, and we all need to all the same people, we need to come together and discuss it just like you heard. We need to come together, discuss it, and make it so widespread that everyone hears it because, well, it's the law. You should not be afraid to discuss it. And when you're dealing with crazy people, that's what you need to do sometimes, is push it in their face instead of hiding and hoping you're never found. Is that you have a large group of people that come together and say, this is the law. This is what we're saying, and this is what we want. We just want it. We want it done. It's the law, and this is how you do it. I no longer trust humans. I trust the robot. I no longer trust any of you. I now want new building permits for the hospital, and also want laws that all physicians and nurses must demand that when you walk in the hospital with any complaint, the first thing they do is they run scans on you for any sort of radiological problem and fix it immediately. And that if it was caused by someone else, you are not given a bill. The person that caused it is given a bill. That way it forces them to take responsibility for their malpractice. For their malpractice. If I go to the hospital and they scam me and they're like, your body has this, you've been radio attacked or radio focused for so long that it became solid and I have to break it up. Well, it's easy to break up. It's not done by surgery. You don't have to be cut open at all. They can do it with a computer, and so they can do it without ever cutting you open, without causing you any harm. But if they find any harm, they are going to find, they're going to report, they're going to find, let's say the media channel 3000 caused it. Well, they're going to find them, and they'll be discussed by the other 5,000 channels for causing harm. Or if the policeman caused it, he will be fined, and everybody's going to discuss it. or a hospital caused it, they're going to be fined and it'll be discussed. Or if the military does it, they will immediately be fined and discussed. But when the victim goes to the hospital, they're not paying for it. Those people are paying for it when they fix it. Then you'll have your checkup, and then the doctor might talk to you and see what else is going on. And then you have the freedom to either stop it or not. This also goes with everything else. That's the way the hospital should be done, without any question in my mind. Let's say it needs to be done that way. Without any question in my mind. It sounds so stupid, maybe to insane people, but I'm telling you, without a shadow of a doubt, that's what everyone should be discussing. And that it's building permit, that all hospitals have to be reorganized, that when the first couple of rooms, that's the first room that you see. Before you get into any surgery room, before you get questioned by anyone. Well, maybe you'll get questioned. You'll have somebody ask you some questions, because it's always good to sort of talk to people. But most certainly before you do agree to any surgeries or anything, it's just never going to happen. And that all mass media that causes a problem, they are going to be fined and approached. And that they're going to be punished and sent the bill, and that they're going to pay for it. Which they can also pay for it in other ways. Instead of money, now I got to make money. Well, I got stuck in a hole. I had to become corrupt. Well, maybe I want you to pay for it by losing your job, by self-termination, and then all the other news media talk about your channel or your company cause that harm on all channels. But no matter what, when it comes to that room, really, it's never going to be, I don't think it'll ever really be, when we advance upwards, it's never going to be the victim's fault. But just for the hospital alone, let's say you are going to charge the patient and you do it, it should not be a large amount of money. It should be at the very most maybe like $50. I mean, you need to be really as less as possible. Largely just your time to get it done, and that's it. Really, it shouldn't be that. You want to know why? It's just free. Because we're going to have a monument and a robot that does it for free. And that's the way it is. And why do we need it to happen for free? Because if you mess this up, the real news nationwide is we have empty cities, dead people. It's not from a disease, it's from all of you malpracticing, or you don't know what you're doing. And we need to have it.